I'm Tony Ruiz of Gold Derby here with costume designer Jeriana San Juan, who is behind the clothes, the look of the new Netflix limited series Halston. Jeriana, I would have to imagine that as a costume designer, you find out that you're going to be working on a show like Halston. Is the first thing that goes through your mind total excitement, or is it total fear?
It's simultaneous, I think. Maybe initially it's excitement and then it's fear because you sort of just throw yourself off the cliff and then you're like, oh gosh, I've got to find a way to land this safely. But no, it was both, and I think that's what's so exciting about it, and that's what's so appealing about it. And I've really just felt like some of the best projects that I've been able to do in my career have been the scariest, and that's what's so great about it.
So when you dive into this, where do you start? Do you go right to research? Where do you start in your process?
So yes, it always starts with research for me, and really, especially with something like this, where it's a real story. It really was about kind of finding out what the truth was. Seeing everything that was documented of this world, of Halston's collections, of the surrounding zeitgeist. What to me, it was to nail the Halston look through all of these periods. I really also wanted to sort of show a vocabulary around that shows the context of his style, and really sort of build the whole design around his collections as essentially a central character in the show. In some way, I think I was sort of really trying to highlight that as a central focus, that his creativity, his art, and then build the show around that. So to me, it was all about finding out what music was playing on the radio, what were girls inspired by, what did that fashion world look like surrounding him, and researching not only the fashion elements, what was women's wear daily showing in 1968 versus 1979, but also, what were politics like, what was influencing culture and people, so that I can, even for the extras in the background and the surrounding, cast, do it all accurately. And then, of course, and then you abandon research eventually and design a show.
How much awareness did you have of Halston prior to diving into this?
I had a very much an awareness of him because I had come from a fashion background. So I already had an appreciation. I'd been like my own little collector, actually, just kind of getting pieces here and there. And so yeah, I had an awareness of Halston. I did not know him, or his artistry so intimately, or this world so intimately, until I really, started on this project. And now I feel like I could write a book, of course. I really, read every book there was. I studied his mentors and looked at, his influences, the designers he was looking to, designers that have since been influenced by him. I really feel like, that was important to me in sort of gaining the keys to unlock this story.
Dan Minahan had told me that he referred to Halston as a kind of a world creator. What do you think is really the essence of the Halston look for people who maybe don't follow fashion?
So the essence of the Halston look is this, it's very clean lines. It's very minimalist. It's very it's like a haiku of fashion. It really takes a lot of complicated ideas and boils them down to a very simple visual language that ultimately enhances beauty and also allows freedom and comfort and elegance and ease. And it's really just such a beautiful balance that Halston was able to create in finding, what is a Halston and what that vocabulary is. But I have to tell you, as a costume designer of a show that took place from the early 1960s to the late 1990s, it really was quite difficult to date those clothes, to give them a feeling and an energy that they made sense in context, because some of the pieces that he created in the very early stages of his career are still as timeless and eternal and fashionable today. So that was sort of one of the greater challenges, was just kind of painting a canvas around these clothes to really help you understand just how forward they were.
Yeah, the series really does take us through like so many of these different periods, from the 60s, like you say, to the 70s and the Studio 54 era. And you get to recreate the Versailles kind of fashion show, which is very famous. Was there one particular era that proved to be the most difficult?
I think it's all difficult. I think it's always difficult because we also pass through time so quickly within the 5 episodes of this show. So really it was about just sort of nailing as many of those as accurately and as distinctly and quickly as we could, because we moved through time so swiftly. And, I think it's all, ultimately, I think just about how you want to sort of contextualize it visually for the audience. And so I think in order to create the span of time, it was really about finding a vocabulary of color. I often start with color when I'm starting to think about design, and anchoring the 1960s in a palette that feels distinctly 60s, some of those avocado greens that just feel like the period, to, jump to some of the brighter, bolder colors of the early 80s. I feel like those are sort of key points that kind of helped create lampposts along the journey.
I one of the things that I love about this series is the actual kind of showing the creation of some of these looks, which is something you don't always get. It almost kind of deconstructs it in a way. And you actually get to see Ewan McGregor as Halston kind of coming up with some of these looks. So I would imagine that you and he kind of worked really closely together.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the most exciting parts about this project for me. And I truly hope there are more opportunities like this. I hope more shows get made like this in the future for myself, for indulgently for myself, and for other costume designers, because it was just such a unique participation in a project. I think it was the costumes and the creation of the fashion in the show was just such an integral part of unlocking, Halston's creativity and seeing and doing those scenes. So yeah, I was very much a part of creating, deciding which collections we would even feature, and working backwards from that and finding what initial idea Halston might have to work into what ultimately becomes a dress that walks down the runway. And so to work backwards on that level very early on, with Dan and with Char White, and really kind of work into the script what might even be created, and then work with Ewan on, an idea, and I'd sort of work the whole thing out. I'd film myself sometimes just kind of going through it just for Dan, just to sort of pitch him ideas of what if it was a bias dress, and what if this is how it came together. And, because we're working quite swiftly along each other in production on a television series. And we would sort of decide on what it was. I'd work out the whole thing start to finish, and walk Ewan through it. And I think in doing that process with Ewan and walking him through sort of I call it sort of like design choreography of even how to pull fabric off a roll of fabric, how to pull a yardage off of a roll of fabric like you've been doing it for 20 plus years, and how to, what the body language is, and how to control a roll of fabric, and how somebody who's a professional would even handle a pair of scissors, or pin. So I'd walk him through all that, and we'd have our own little rehearsals and, of creating those moments. And he's a quick study. People have been asking me about Ewan, and he's he is so clever and smart, and really just kind of got it. And he truly amazed me.
One of my, obviously, I think one of the most fun parts of this show are the scenes involving Krista Rodriguez as Liza Minnelli. And was that when you have, because so many of Liza's looks are so iconic, how do you even begin with those? Do you know, did you have ideas in your head of exactly where you wanted to go, particularly with the Liza Minnelli character?
I think yes and no. It was really about being truthful to the storytelling and to the moments that we were capturing with her. There is so much well-documented Liza that it just feels like Liza, but it may not fit congruently into what our story's journey is. And I really I think in the same sort of note that we didn't want to do just all of the pastiche and all of the caricature and those famous moments. I think it was about maybe finding one or two that feel iconically Liza, and certainly Liza with a Z, iconic Liza. But also finding those moments in between where we get to see her fully or not, completely done for the cameras, or, just kind of show these people as holistic, full people with all, with all the parts. And so that was important, I think, to hit all those notes so we get to celebrate that, because this show is a celebration. It's a celebration of these people and their immense creativity and their friendship and love and all of those good things. So celebrate the clothes and celebrate this, fabulous Liza with a Z, clear sequin, impossibly short dress, and do it as well as we possibly could, literally find clear sequin to apply to red fabric to just do it exactly, because it had such a mirrored look to it. It's a very particular type of fabric. And and then also just, put her in a kimono when something's soft or on a phone call. And and I can't, and then again with Krista, it was just those dance costumes. It's one of my favorite things. And just, in fittings, trying on these mock-ups, and we kind of rework them so that she can find all of her movements, in the same way that Halston found clothes to work with Liza so that she can dance and do Liza. We had the same moments with Krista, finding her Liza, finding what her leg kits were going to look like, or her arms, so that we can sort of find that nuance of Liza.
You've done so many you have such a varied career. Do certain time periods, are certain time periods more challenging than others to tackle, or is it just one big adventure?
It's that's a great way to say it. It is one big adventure. I think I'm attracted to any and all. I have maybe an affinity for some periods than others, stylistically, but it's all incredibly exciting to me. And I think I always want to do something maybe I haven't done before, so that I continue to feel scared. And I think, maybe it just continues to challenge, and that's exciting, and I think maybe even redoing things. I mean, I've done the 70s before I'd done Halston, and I found that kind of joyous, just to do it through the voice of a different director and see that period and those people and a different story within that time. It felt completely different, than The Get Down, for example, which was also 70s. And so yeah, I guess it's always exciting to me. I just love the story. I just love stories.
The story of Halston is also really one about kind of this growing desire to kind of corporatize and kind of mass market these designer looks. Do you think that ultimately has been a positive thing, or do you see that as more of a negative thing?
Well, I think the corporatization of fashion, I mean, that's a layered topic, man. That is a layered topic. I don't know if I really am even qualified to even talk about it, publicly. I just feel like ultimately what I think he did do to fashion is it put his thumbprint on modern American fashion. And so I think people really don't understand just quite the level of influence that he's had on modern American fashion. And I really hope this will sort of maybe educate an audience on learning more about him, and his story, because it is a very unfortunate story, and the legacy is heartbreaking. I think especially for me as an artist, as a costume designer, and somebody who came from fashion and understands, what exactly, just the brilliance of his creativity. It really makes me so sad how kind of separated he was from his own legacy and his own name. So yeah, I think it's a cautionary tale, but at the same time, it just shows you sometimes if you're the first one, if you're the pioneer, it doesn't always go well with you. It doesn't go well for you, but maybe it goes better for people behind you, and maybe that's the glowing sort of end of his legacy, because now people celebrate having a Target line and also selling at Bergdorf's. So go figure.
Well, Jeriana, congratulations. Such wonderful work. Everybody go to goldderby.com, make your predictions for the Emmys, and stay tuned for more interviews with contenders throughout the season. Jeriana San Juan, thank you so much.
Thank you.